Welcome everyone and thanks for joining us in JetPatch Monthly Patch Tuesday Overview. As every month, we are going to discuss the latest Patch Tuesday release from Microsoft, along with some important vulnerabilities from different vendors such as Reddit, SUSE, and many more. My name is Or Smolnik and I'm a product manager here in JetPatch. I've also invited my colleague Gili to discuss about some of JetPatch features and how can they help you with the remediation. Hey Gili, what do you think about this month's Patch Tuesday?
Hey Or, thank you for having me here. Well, I think there are some critical issues that are very interesting this month, and I hope that the people that are hearing this podcast will hear our advice and patch quickly.
I hope so too. I fully agree with you and good to have you here. So let's start. Today we will see the highlights of September Patch Tuesday. We will review some notable vulnerabilities with this Patch Tuesday, and also a spoiler later, there is one vulnerability that we will review that is from 2 weeks ago but is still relevant. The last part of the session will be to review some of JetPatch features and see how can they help you with the remediation. So without further ado, let's start. In this September Patch Tuesday, we have 60 unique CVEs. 3 of them are critical with 8.9 average score, 56 of them are important with 7.1, and one additional vulnerability did not get any severity from Microsoft, and also there is no score for it as well, but it is related to Chromium-based browsers. We can see that one of the vulnerability is in use for active attack, and 2 others are publicly known. It's important to say that few of the vulnerabilities that already patched in this Patch Tuesday are also now publicly known and can be used in active attacks, so it's very important to patch the vulnerabilities, especially the ones that we will review today. We can see that the affected products are all of the desktops and servers versions of Windows as usual, but on top of that we have also the Windows Server 2022, the newest Windows Server that exists. We also have some Azure services and products, and we will review a critical vulnerability related to them. And like all the past Patch Tuesday, we have the Microsoft Office, SharePoint, Visual Studio, and also some video extensions that are vulnerable to some vulnerabilities. We can see that there are almost 50% are related to elevation of privileges, but the most critical ones in this Patch Tuesday are related to the remote code execution with almost a quarter of the vulnerabilities, a little bit more of quarter of the vulnerabilities in this Patch Tuesday. The first vulnerability that we will review is a critical one, rated almost the highest rating exists. It's 9.8, and it is related to the Open Management Infrastructure, or in short the OMI, which is a service that exists in most of Azure services or products for managing the agent of Azure or managing the infrastructure itself. This vulnerability can be exploited by sending a specially crafted message to the OMI service that is running on several services on the endpoint. And actually, if you will take the headers of the request and get rid of the auth header, it will automatically provide you a root privileges even without providing any authentication at all. This is the main vulnerability here. So all users that are using the affected Azure services, all the endpoints and the infrastructure are heavily infected from this vulnerability. And it's also important to know that there are additional 3 vulnerabilities that related to the same OMI component. So it's very important to patch all of the fixes into your infrastructure. Also, the OMS agent that heavily used for Azure and for other Microsoft services is also something that is affecting. is affected, so it's very important to update this agent as well. We put here a dedicated blog or a dedicated article that Microsoft released a few days ago that is talking about what is the OMI vulnerabilities and how it is related to Azure, and also a dedicated and a really detailed description table of which services and products are related, are affected by these vulnerabilities. So you can see the list in the right. Some of them are really, really basic, like the Azure Security Center and the Azure Automation. Some other services are related to the automation state configuration and also log analytics. And it's very important. So if you have any small, medium, or large infrastructure in Azure, it's very important to review this article and make sure that you are doing the right steps in order to fix this problem. Some of the fixes can be to just wait and wait for Microsoft to update the service on the cloud, or if you have on-premises agents or services, then you will need to download updates and deploy that in your environment. All of the details are described in this article, which will be also available in the description of the video later today. So the second vulnerability that we will discuss today is about Wlan Autoconfig service. It is a critical vulnerability with 8.8 score from Microsoft. This vulnerability is based on the Wlan Autoconfig service or component that is built in Windows 10 and helps the Windows to select the best network to connect to. It's very important to patch this vulnerability on workstations and laptops of your employees, especially the ones that are working from remote and from unsecure places. It's important to say that the attacker should be in the same place as the victim, because when the Windows is searching for the best Wi-Fi to connect to, then the attacker can exploit this process and execute a code, whatever he wants. The last vulnerability that we will review today is about Microsoft MS HTML remote code execution vulnerability. Microsoft actually released a fix 2 weeks ago because it was very critical, and it is and there is a wide range of exploits that can be done using this vulnerability. Right now it's rated as important severity and 8.8 score as part of Patch Tuesday, of course. And this vulnerability is about a malicious Microsoft Office documents that can be sent to the victim by the attacker. And this document contains a malicious ActiveX control code that can be exploited, and actually some code can be run on the endpoint right after the victim is opening the Microsoft document, the Office document. So of course that all workstations can be affected. Usually users are going to open the Microsoft Office documents on their laptops or workstations, so they are the primary affected products here. And if there is a policy of opening the files from the internet in a protected view or an application guard, then it is blocking the vulnerability. But of course, right after the user clicks on edit this document, then the vulnerability is executed and there is a remote code and there is a code execution that's happening in the environment. Of course, that it's important to note that the code is running in the privileges of the running user, of the opening user. So of course that if admin opens this Microsoft Office document, it is more critical and is very bad than a regular user is opening this document. And also Microsoft providing some mitigations and workarounds, such as disable the ActiveX in your organization. It can be using the group policy or using a script to execute on all of your infrastructure to close some to do some stuff in the registry to close and make sure the ActiveX won't start. Also, the Microsoft Defender antivirus is already updated with the latest updates and including this fix, so it will prevent this malicious ActiveX code to be executed. So it's really important to make sure that your Microsoft Defender definitions are up to date, or any other antivirus that you are using. Now we will review a few of the latest JetPatch features, and we will start with JetPatch Remediation Plan Report.
Yeah, so, or if I may, basically part of our continuous improvements led us to develop a PDF version of the compliance report. For those of you who don't know, this is a snapshot of the remediation plan status. The remediation plan is basically the set of patches we'd like to install on a group of devices. And it includes the percentage of the plan which is installed, what is still missing, updates that perhaps have failed, and what is the expected baseline compliance. It also shows the endpoints compliance and the patching action status. So it provides you live data that you can now download and export in a PDF version to send it to the relevant stakeholders. This is what it looks like, and it has all the details that you have on our application. Basically, it's the same.
Yeah, this is part of our initiative to provide more and more PDF reports, and eventually any report here in JetPatch will be available in a CSV for additional analysis, but also in a PDF, so users and customers will be able to provide the report as is to their colleagues and bosses for additional review in a more human readable format.
Yes. So if we continue with this path, so we've also created another report, which is a very, very important report. It's called the Patches Compliance Report. You can generate this report from the Patches catalog. It basically describes the status of the filtered patches across the environment. Okay, so if you filter this table and then download this report, only the filtered patches will be seen. What does it include? It includes the patch details, whether it's the name, the advisory, operating system, product, category, CVE, and more. It also shows you the data on the relevant remediation plans this patch is related to, what are the relevant applicable endpoints, and of course, what's most important, the patch status on each applicable endpoint, and whether there is a failure date or an install or remove date for this specific patch. And then you can use this data basically to further analyze it and see the install percentage of each patch in your environment. All right, perfect. So another great feature that we've released lately is the Interactive Reboot, and it's also relevant to all the vulnerabilities that we've just reviewed, especially to the third vulnerability that is related to Windows 10 users that need to use such a feature. What is this feature? Basically, it's a built-in service that will initiate an interactive flow notification based to involve the logged in endpoint user with the needed reboot operation. So as you can see here, we have 3 different actions. The first one would be to reboot now. And in this case, our agent will initiate a reboot that will apply the changes 2 minutes after the user have confirmed. The second option is to snooze. The notification will basically be dismissed and will be shown only 4 hours later. And the last option is cancel, which basically tells us that the user is currently canceling the reboot and does not want to do it. In case we have special version updates, so we just want to emphasize that JetPatch also knows how to handle such cases and will reboot smoothly on those updates. As we can see now on the screen, basically this is the settings for the interactive reboot, and we have here 4 different settings to use actually this feature. The first one is the notification count, which basically shows the number of times a user can snooze or ignore the reboot. We use 5 as default. This is configurable. The second setting is the notification timeout. It's in minutes. And this is basically the number of minutes for a notification to be shown. It's 60 by default. And if there is no response from the endpoint user after the specified timeout, a new notification is shown. The third one is allow the user to cancel the reboot. It is a flag to allow the user to cancel the reboot or not. Pretty straightforward. And it's important to say that we can see it in the logs and alerts or as an exemption if the user has indeed canceled. And JetPatch, if such case happens and user canceled the reboot, JetPatch will not continue to future tasks and will not operate them unless a reboot is actually performed eventually. And the last one is start reboot procedure only if reboot is needed. This is basically before raising any notification for the interactive reboot, our agent, the JetPatch agent, will check if a reboot is needed. And if it is not needed, we will not continue to the interactive flow. All right. So this is an example of a workflow that you can add to JetPatch, which includes the interactive reboot feature. Let's give an example. In your organization, there is a marketing department, and they need to install those critical patches, and we want to provide them the ability to use an interactive reboot because we don't want to disturb their ongoing operations. So we can add as a post task the interactive reboot with all the different settings that we've just showed for those desktops. So this is a really great example on how you can leverage the interactive reboot and add it as part of your remediation plans.
Thank you very much, Gili. We will end with that. That's all for now. If you are looking for more information or are interested in JetPatch product, you can always reach us from our website. Thanks for having you with us, and see you next month right after Microsoft Patch Tuesday. Wishing you a successful patching cycle. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.